Welcome back to the working that is Chrononauts Chronicles. My name is Bill, and I am joined this week by two of the other Prime Krononauts. We will hear from them in just a moment. But first, I did want to mention off the bat that the show is sponsored by mysticalwares.com. And looking at the old Farmer's Almanac this week for upcoming events and energy happenings to be looking out for. Just a side note, I did learn that there is a old Farmer's Almanac and then a Farmer's Almanac, two different publications. The old Farmer's Almanac was started in 1792, and I believe the Farmer's Almanac was in 1818. Both have a very good track record, I believe, in predicting weather events and such, but I didn't know that there were two almanacs until just a few moments ago. So, yeah, we've been using specifically the old Farmer's Almanac. And so it looks like on Wednesday, the moon and Mercury are going to be conjunct, and there will be an occultation of Jupiter and the moon. And that's a new word and abbreviation for me, so I had to look that up. And that occultation means an eclipse of a star or planet by the moon or another planet. So I learned something new. I can check that off for the second segment, but I won't. That's cheating. But anyway, Ascension Thursday is coming up, and on that day, the Moon and Uranus are conjunct, and then Friday we have a new moon on Friday. So that's a quick look at the almanac. And the next segment that we like to do here on the show has to do about gratitudes. And the point behind this segment, and it is, I don't know, issued with the challenge, I guess, because we want to do more than just meet once a week here and talk about something that we're grateful for. The idea behind it is to perpetuate that state and to persist in it continually throughout our lives and throughout the week and such. So I guess I'll go first to start off with, and then I'll kick it to Derek, and then we'll hear from Ben. But this week, I decided to be grateful for trash removal. And this is because we are getting a new deck installed. So the contractor rented this big dumpster that we've had out in our driveway for a week now. And as you may recall, we recently constructed a buckwheat whole mattress. So we have a queen size mattress and box spring set to get rid of that we're no longer using. And we were able to toss that in the dumpster and have it hauled away for free, which is super convenient because being out in the middle of nowhere, basically, we would have to rent a truck or something and take it to the dump ourselves. But hey, we got the luxury of a huge dumpster, so took advantage of it. That's super convenient. And yeah, just trash removal in general, because and it wasn't too long ago, I believe, that was not a common thing to have. I'm not certainly, I mean, never in I always remember trash removal being around, but you guys might differ. But I know that the house I'm currently in was built in 79, and there is a huge trash dump from the 80s out back of the property. There's actually a shower tub buried back there that we found and uncovered. But anyway, yeah, just trash removal. It's super convenient, modern luxury that I know that not everybody has, and I guess it's been a relatively recent development in this part of the world. So that is my gratitude. Do you guys have any thoughts on trash removal, or do you want to just share something else completely different? That's okay too.
I was going to say I can add that to my list of gratitudes as well because that's a good one. I do have a different one I wrote down here, but yeah, and that's kind of nice because I used to live in a nearby city where I did not have trash removal, so I'd have to separate mine, different ones, and then take it and haul it off, all sorts of things. And you learn a whole lot more because you realize not everything's as air quotes here recyclable as they say. And even just the lid on this, I'm not going to draw this out too long here, but so many different things that I had to nitpick. There's a big realization that darn near nothing's recyclable. I mean, I'm not saying nothing, but most of it wasn't because they had blended different things with it. Even clothing, there was plastic in it, I found out. So it was odd. But I'll jump in my gratitude real quick. Uh, the and because I always, I'll just be totally honest. I usually get caught off guard when we jump into this, and I hear you saying, "Okay, time for gratitude." I'm like, "Oh," so I'm like, "Okay, what's happened here?" So I'm in, behind the scenes, muted, going, "Okay, what's happened?" Well, and why I'm kind of pointing that out is because I draw from what happened an hour ago, and many times before that. People, so I'm talking about again mystical words because that's where I'm at, our store here. It's the people that come in because I see such a wide range of understandings that individuals have, or customers, that I like the ones that are coming in opening up. For example, a lady and her son came in yesterday, I think it was, asking about shungai. We talk about this all the time, but they didn't understand any of the woo-woo metaphysical stuff. It was all science, but they were willing to hear some of it, some of that, what I make fun of, calling woo-woo, as others do. And they were receptive. So yeah, I'm just grateful for people that will come in and not just, and they in the head they say, okay, crazy guy, crazy as hell, talking about a magic black rock. Who knows what they're thinking? But no, they came back with legit questions, listening to what I was putting out. So that's kind of my bigger point, that more and more people are being open to the metaphysical aspects of reality, as you can kind of call it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's always really encouraging to hear the stories about people being open-minded and wanting to learn more, or at least being, like open, right? To be redundant, to expanding their knowledge base, especially nowadays. It gives you a little bit more faith in humanity, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, and I see it every day in here. Yep.
Ben, did you have a gratitude this week?
Um, I did adopt the attitude of gratitude, I guess is an easy way to put it. But a year and a half ago, maybe more, um, and it is the first thing I say every morning upon putting my feet back on the ground. Um, it's just a quiet thank you, and it's interesting because I find myself um, finding the little things all day long now that it's been part of my practice for as long as it has. And yeah, it's today was a good day. There were many things that I whispered thank you for. So can't really put my finger on it right now.
Oh, that's the whole point, is just to be in love with everything around you, because when you're in a good mood, that's all you're going to be receiving back, right? And I love the morning gratitude practice. I am not the best at doing it right away, but I remember a good tip I heard from, I believe it was Joel Cochran, who I interviewed on 13 Questions, and he said that what he does is he puts his hands up in the morning, like right when he wakes up, and you're lying on your back, right? And then because you're putting them up because you're like, yeah, it's gonna be a good day, and you do that. And of course, you can just stretch into if you want. I did that for a little bit, and yeah, doing it right off the bat is definitely a good way to set the tone for the day. And yeah, like you were saying, it allows you to just get gratitude out of the little things. Like the other day, I was walking through my backyard, and I had a t-shirt on that had a picture of trees on it, and I had to duck underneath this mulberry tree branch to get, because I was walking the dog, and it's downhill, and the dog was downhill, and I was further uphill, and I'm tall, and this tree's at a weird angle. But anyway, my shirt got caught on it, and I just caught myself laughing because I have a tree shirt that got caught on a tree. I don't know. It's just little things, little stupid things like that. But yeah, so that was the first segment. And yeah, like I said, the idea here is just to a reminder and a pattern. I use it as a pattern breaker, really. Like when I'm getting ready to prep for the show and I haven't thought of gratitude and need to think of one, I catch myself, you know, feel myself going into that flow state that gratitude creates, heart and brain coherence, and it works. Like it works, guys. So it's fun actually when you're trying to think of a good one because you spend like a longer time in that state.
That's a really good point. You're right. Yeah, I need to remember that. It's a little tough. I am in overdrive all the time, especially running the store and just doing. I'm not getting all that, but just it, it's a lot running the retail store, of course, and then just the interactions every day.
Yeah, I've been super busy myself, and we're all busy with everything going on in our lives. So speaking of that, on that note, being busy, moving on to the second segment, I guess I wanted to update. Not, I do have an update, but that's uh, coming later. But the new business, the second segment, I started a new book, so I wanted to talk about this the new psychology by Charles F. Hannell, and actually started reading this book on Ben's recommendation. And this guy apparently was the inspiration, one of the inspirations behind Napoleon Dynamite, Napoleon Hill's writings, and oh, who's the other guy? Um, it slips my mind, but he's an influencer from way back in the day, influencer of the influencers that we all know about today, really. And yeah, Derek, I'm slipping. Wow, what I was going to connect that to new business because you had made a comment about slowing down. Oh yeah, yeah. So I actually bought three books by Charles in one. So the first one is the Master Key System, which is the one that he's pretty well known for, at least the one that I heard him about through first. And come to find out upon reading, actually starting to read the book, it is a series of 24, I think it's 24-week exercises, meditations. He has bullet points about whatever the topic is, right? And then there's a question and answer section at the end. And each week he gives you an exercise to practice, to get good at, and to further your progression along your spiritual path, right? And the first week's exercise is all about just sitting still and not trying to control your thoughts, but just being, right? Period. And that's definitely something I don't do as often as I know I should or want to anyway. But that is a tricky thing because um, you don't really have to spend. At least I don't think you do. Guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion, I don't think you need to spend an exorbitant amount of time in meditation. I think that if you overthink it, you're actually doing more harm than good. What do you think?
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, for me, it's I think it's relative to each person, of course. So it depends. For some, it's a great thing and longer. I'm not dissing it, but I don't do it. I have done it. I don't do it regularly, and it hasn't
Uh,
slowed me down. I gotta check this audio because I'm not sure I was even broadcasting this whole time. It's a little odd with this that we're going to get a new radio station, like I said before, for internet, but I think it was kind of chopping us, at least separating me. But anyway, we should be there now. But I was saying, as far as the meditation thing, I don't have time. I do it, but it's different because when people think meditation, they think, oh, you sat down for this amount of time and you struck this yoga pose and you held your breath or did that. And I'm not dissing any of those things. Are all great. But that's not how I do it. I do it differently. And that's I'll jokingly say just coming out of fifth gear and going into fourth gear. That's about the closest to that type of meditation someone like me is going to get. But it is a benefit to do to even slow down that little bit.
Yeah, and in the time frame from everything that I've been reading lately that's been suggested as a time, like even Neville Goddard is it's only like a cat nap's worth of quote unquote meditation time. And even Charles Hannell, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but Haanel, his recommendation was, only 15 minutes. So it's not like these people I haven't heard a practical recommendation of somebody saying, yeah, do an hour a day. Like, is
That
that
can be when you're going to bed at night. So if it takes you 15 minutes to get to sleep or 10 or 20 or an hour, whatever, that's your meditation time and or the morning.
right? And those in between sleep and wake states, like those hypnagogic states, like you can access, like that's where you can lucid dream more, I think. Like that's in my experience, you're able to kind of hop back in to dreamland if you're still, not all the way awake yet. It's a
Oh
weird
yeah,
state of consciousness.
you can do it even if you're conscious anyway. So don't even limit yourself by thinking that, because I just loosely call it remote perception. They like to call it remote viewing, but no, it's perception. You can do it all. All your chakras and senses can be active, not just sight. But I've done it either way, jumping back into dreams or being that, halfway asleep, halfway awake. Because I used to think that too, that you have to be right there or this. And then I realized, no, I can do it a different way. So I'll just say it varies um, for each of us.
Yeah, being able to go ahead, Ben.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm on the other end of the pendulum swing on that because um I'm of the school of if you don't have time to meditate for 15 minutes, that means you need to meditate for an hour. And if I have spent days at a time in meditation, to where it has just become part of like the gratitude practice. I will find myself chanting throughout the day. If I'm doing something that's repetitive, I'll definitely get into a rhythm, pay attention to my breath, and allow just all the thoughts to just slip through, not focus on any of them, um, noting the ones that need to be, but um, really everything can become a meditation. Driving meditation is one of my favorites. Shower meditation every time, stating intention upon exiting the shower. There really can't. I mean, walking. If I find a labyrinth in town, that's my new favorite spot. You know, um, I have found a lot of benefit of adding it to my daily practice.
Yeah, it's never a bad thing to spend, if you have the ability to spend that amount of time to reach that space. But once you do reach that space, like you were saying, like you're just kind of flowing there. So and existing and moving forward in the gratitude space, field, right? So it is, how long does it take you to get to that space though? It's like you were saying, it's pretty much immediate right after you wake up. And you don't, I mean,
Well, and that's part of it is the more you do something, right? It's a practice, the better you get. So for me to find that stillness is I'm about 3 breaths away. I was not reacting earlier to anything you guys were saying. I just all of a sudden had a lot of chaos out in front of me in the 3D, and I caught myself reacting to it, and I had to take a few breaths, to get back into the space. My world has gotten a lot busier lately as summer's coming in. The lake is waking up, and there's a lot of activity that hasn't been around for quite a few months. It's really changed the vibe around here. So that was an interesting little exercise I just found myself in.
was that
Needing
could you tie that into, I don't know if you took anything personally, but that's the agreement that we're covering in the third.
mm,
But
no,
interested to
not at all. I mean I can't get mad at kids having fun on a wave runner, but the timing of it was interesting. I was about to press unmute and add something to the conversation, and you know, all of a sudden there's a circus in front of me, even playing country music. So when they put radios on wave runners, that's crazy. Anyway, yeah, it's grumpy old man. Um,
kids.
it's well, and I just got back from a hard day of work and haven't had time to meditate properly. If there is a proper way to do it, I don't believe there is. You just do it, and then you start getting better at it. But I haven't had time to, or didn't take the time, I should say, to sit down and breathe and center. So I guess I'll do that now.
Well, the other thing that came to mind is like all of these authors and great thinkers. They have these books that we read and formulas that they give, but these are really all just these they're all beginner courses. You can think of it. This is just a suggestion to get you started on the path. So it gives you something to build off of, right? They're just recommendations. There is no, you know, quote unquote right or wrong, but it gives you a system if you want to follow. Like Charles has got 24, a 24-week system if you want to do that. And there's plenty of other people like you could break up Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. You could break that up into a class if you wanted to, right? And that gives you certain steps, practices to do, and things to stuff to think about and ponder on, right? Meditations, so to speak. So yeah, the more information that the more sources we can draw from, the better. And it's fun when you can draw, parallels between the two. Not parallels, because that's not the right word. They intersect. They're connecting. They're all really talking about the same thing. Like reality transurfing, Neville Goddard. Sounds like Charles, was, you know, up there too. I don't know too much about the guy yet, but
Well, and in the idea of co-creation and working with God or the universe or whatever you want to say there, um, if you are asking of, right, that's a prayer. So you really, to not be rude, in my opinion, you need to take the time to be able to hear the answers. And that's what I've found in meditation is that's really when you can get, fully connected with that higher self cord back to source. And that's there's a lot of value for me in that connection.
yeah. Speaking of hearing, quote unquote the voice, you had shared with me a piece of advice to try to be open to that when you're surrounded by birds, and to not like super pay attention and focus on the noise that the birds are making, the singing, right? But just to be more, catch yourself to be, if you can catch yourself, right? To be more aware in those moments, if you can get out to a quiet place and hear the birds. But is that,
And
go ahead.
it's a lot like the breath work for me too. It's you find that clarity in the space in between.
Yeah. So speaking of birds, another update. I'll bring this up. I don't know if I said this last week or not, but the hummingbirds came back around finally up in Michigan. So it seems like spring is in full swing. Oh yeah, actually, for speaking of spring, sorry to jump around here, but I was going to say for my gratitude before I came up with the trash one, because that just happened today. But I was actually able to take my socks off and stand on the grass the other day. The uh, the last frost of the year was about 2 weeks ago, I believe, or maybe it was last week up here in Michigan. We have a very short growing season and it's cold, right? So we don't get to wear shorts and sandals too much. But yeah, earlier on this week, I actually got to go barefoot. First time barefoot, I think, since winter hit or fall of last year, right? So yeah, grounding is it's an electron transfer. It's physics. I think our bodies are more physics first, right? And biology second. But do you have any favorite grounding methods, anybody? Hugging trees or
Well, and with the gardening season coming in, man, getting your hands down in that dirt too. Um, and yeah, feeling the energy of the plants you're working with and everything around you at the time.
No, I agree, and I actually do go the whole hands on the tree thing because I live here in the
Mm.
Cascade Forest, and yeah, it's you both know that's totally legit. And I drive out to the woods, just did it the other day, and just take off my shoes, go out there, and oh yeah, hug a tree. Yeah,
Yeah, I've been making it a point. I'm eating lunch outside every day. Um, just taking a break in the middle of the day wherever we're working, and the lake I'm on is surrounded by a lot of very old oak and maple and cottonwood, and I just try and find the biggest one that's close by and go lean up against it, you know, say hello and have a glorious break in the day, and really feeling that energy exchange, and I believe getting a boost, you know, to carry on with the labors of the day after that. So.
Yeah, it's not even all woo woo; it's science as well, because you know, and you guys know that it's the orgone energy flow, and yeah, you literally can do just what you said, lean up against a tree, and you will have an energy boost. And then the more you relax and you know lean into it, on however you know we each understand that, the more we can get. And that's what I do too. My ears are ringing now when you talk about the meditation thing, and find I forget how you said it, Ben, but it was really good. But basically the in between things, and that's what I do on this when I'll just make fun of it. The psychic thing when I do sessions, I just go really, really fast at that, and it's because otherwise I'm vesting myself and getting you know in the story, and I don't do that. So it just it is something, and I don't have not that anybody's asking, but a set way of explaining it, but it's something I've honed over the years, being able to turn it on instantaneously and then have the stuff come in. And it's all I can really say to verbalize it is I realized it was a thing and it can be done. And then I stopped struggling and it came easier. So it's kind of like learning to ride a bike, you know, quit focusing on the pedals, the handlebars, not just go with the flow and it goes easier. For whatever that's worth.
Yeah, nothing's ever easy if you're struggling, right?
There you go.
I mean, and yeah, back at that energy exchange with the trees, you know, I've worked um shamanically with oak specifically for about a year now. And damn it, if some of them aren't hilarious. I mean, it's a really good companion for a quiet lunch. So
Yeah, I've had and years. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but I had interactions with trees, but not to the degree I did in the redwood forest when I was out there shungite gifting. I mean, it was a 27-foot around tree, so it was a big one, of course, in a redwood. So it was yeah, and the chakra flushes, I'll say, you know, heart chakra lighting up, and then actually the thing started communicating. And I'm talking about, you know, just like, and I know you get it, Ben, as well, and Bill. But that's what they straight up do. They are, for those listeners that maybe, I think all our listeners get it, but they are straight up conscious entities and they do communicate full conversations. And that's not a joke. And no, you're not going to hear it, you know, a mouth opening like some weird animation thing. But there is no doubt about it, because you don't just hear it, you feel, you perceive it on all levels. So it's even more real than conversing with another person, I would say, because it's you pick up on it on so many levels.
So, speaking of perceiving with other senses beyond the five that we're all, you know, familiar with and taught in school and domesticated with and educated on, right? The other ways of perception, like Ben or Derek, I had this question of both of you, I guess, but when you guys are able to receive these messages, like, and I don't know if you physically hear a voice, or is it your own voice in your head, or is it like it's not a physical sound, right? It's a thought, right? So it's, I'm assuming it's, this is more telekinetic, but does it sound like you, or does it sound like somebody else, or can you just know because of the frequency feels, right? Like, what is that like? I don't know if that making sense at all, but
you are making sense in as much as one can when speaking about this kind of thing. And it, for me, it really depends on the energy itself. um I have the language around this gets tricky, but you know, possession is something. And I knew once I found out about it and figured out how that was operating in my world, um there was a different tone to the voice. So it, what I could tell, there was something different there. It wasn't my voice. And I was working in through with meditation and a few other methods to really hone in on the voice of my soul, right? The higher self, whatever you want to call it. But so the whole idea of know thyself, right? And what is your energy and what is not your energy. And there was difference in tone and frequency for sure.
Which was noticeable even in the not your energy.
Um, Specifically if I had energies attached to me, or um, cracks in my auric field that were getting filled up with other energies. Um, and it was some initiatory kind of training through higher self that was getting me there. And it really did help, hone in on and tune into my frequency, so I know what is mine and what isn't. And but again, like I said, it depends on the energy itself. So if it's just a piece of a disembodied spirit, that comes in a lot different for me than um say a message from source or one of the ascended masters or something like that. I don't know, I'm starting to turn some corners on a lot of these ideas and arguments on my path right now, so I'm a little hesitant to get too detailed about it, but I could tell. And it's not just the telepathy with that you experience with a lot of these energies. There was a definite there was movement to it, I guess, is the best way to put it.
No, that's I yeah, the in answering your question from my perspective too, no, a lot of it's definitely similar to exactly what Ben was saying. And then for me too, it's I guess that is a good way of putting it, is you can say energies, entities. But when I pick up on it, it's the whole gambit. So I can hear it, and that sort of freaking me out at first, because you'd actually hear the tones, the frequencies here in three, so straight up like a person in the room. And then all of a sudden it would, as my understanding expanded, then they didn't have to try and meet me in 3D so much. So I would meet them in, we'll just call it the metaphysical densities for another way of communicating it. So as I did that, then it was easier for them to communicate. So then it would be more etheric. So it'd be in your imagination level. And of course, as we've all said, your imagination is real. I love using that word, but most people skirt around it, because that's the easiest way for us to wrap our heads around it, that is a frequency level. Both my ears are ringing like crazy right now, just doing that. And I know Ben knows what I mean. That's all just toning frequency.
Well, and Bill brought up the hypnagogic state, right? That Neville Goddard talks about a lot. And that is how I perceive that space, where we're meeting the energies, mine and whoever else's is meeting there in that hypnagogic space in between. And imagination is just as good a word for it as anything else. It's not quite the dream space, right? It's not the astral, it's somewhere else.
Yeah, it's real subtle, because it comes in when I do that, I just call it psychic thing. It's I don't steer anything, it's going with the flow, listen to your spider senses, gut instincts. It's subtle, it comes in fast. I don't drive this.
Well, and what helped me a lot, specifically when I first started working with my higher self, right? Before the energetic and physical merge, a lot of people use the video game analogy for reality, and it is very much like your higher self is looking down, watching and playing the game, and then when that energy merges in your physical, it's more of a first person experience. So to get that process started, one of the things I was meditating on a lot is who is Eckhart Tolle, "You Are Not Your Thoughts." It was either him or Alan Watts or all of those guys. Everybody, I mean, they all are saying the same thing on a different frequency, basically. But you are not your thoughts, right? You are the one listening to your thoughts. And wherever those thoughts are coming from, be it your own patterns or ancestral, DNA kind of memory stuff, or somewhere else entirely, it helps you discern where those frequencies are coming from. And it was interesting because as I was separating those out, I worked exclusively with several different quote unquote spirit guides in the beginning, and their voices would shine through a little brighter and usually lead to a better outcome. A lot going back into the four agreements, being impeccable with your word and carrying out, doing what you say you're going to do, that kind of thing. That was the guidance there. And whether or not it's another version of you doing it, from another reality, or it's I worked with the ghost of Ernest Hemingway a lot. It seemed like it was him for sure.
I have yet to read any Hemingway, I will admit. Yeah, big letdown, I know. But yeah, the "you are not your thoughts" that ties perfectly into not taking things personally. The agreement that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, because even within like our own opinions about ourselves, like we don't have to agree to those because we have the power to change that, right? And we'll get into that later. But you mentioned the tones change, and you also mentioned possession, and those two things uh, made me think of channeling, right? Because you see these, I mean, there's videos of them all over the place. The person will have like their normal voice, right? And then they will be suddenly possessed by an ET, and then their voice will change a tone, and then they will like be channeling whatever message, right? And I know, like, does that when I don't know what I'm asking here, but I know that it's a choice that you can make to allow that to happen or not. Isn't
Yes.
that within your own mind too? Because I know that within private conversations that Derek and I have had, Derek has had somebody, I don't know who it was, tried to speak, and Derek said no, because that's not how we roll, right? But like, I mean, these are all just instances and evidences that are piling up to where it really does seem that these messages and such can get through. But yeah, I don't know about is there a way to tell if someone, I mean, I guess you just use your intuition, right? But yeah, I don't know. I've always been,
To tell what about him?
I don't know, just approaching things with a healthy dose of skepticism, I guess, is
Oh, for sure.
what I've been used to doing, right, ever since uh, my experience with the Catholic
Yeah,
Church.
I mean,
Yeah, so questioning
for
everything. It just seems far-fetched, but the more that I read and discover it, I guess it's not. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
What
well, I,
far as possession, you mean? Or
Like, because yeah,
communicating?
yeah, and channeling, like if
Oh, all that. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I call BS and all that for who knows how many decades of my life. I'm like, oh, sure, you're talking to dead people. Yeah, I made fun of all that. Again, I'll make fun of myself. And I couldn't have been more wrong, because now I do it for a living, and it is what it is. And as I just went with the flow, like I said, went more into it, it got clearer, and then more stuff happened. So I would say, I'd suggest anybody out there, don't think for a second that you're not able to. And by the way, it's already scientifically proven anyway. It's called telepathy, and you guys already know that. Now we like to call it different things, this, that, and the other. And by the way, you don't have to be incarnate to be telepathic. Whoever said that, and that's not a thing either. So you don't have to be in a physical body to communicate. So it's always a play of words down here, and then how people spin it. But I mean, you can communicate. Animals communicate. That's been, again, scientifically proven. Not that anybody needs a scientist to dub something legit. In fact, kind of the opposite. But no, it has been shown and or tested on many levels, and it does get stronger, the communication thing. You don't go anywhere. I was on a podcast yesterday, and somebody brought up or asked a question. They're talking about the pyramids. They used them for to become immortal and live forever. They're talking about the different kings and just different individuals. I'm like, what are they even talking about? You're already immortal. It's called a spirit, a soul, whatever word you want to say. I'm like, so, and then by the way, why would you want to be immortal, air quotes here, in that same vehicle called a body for that long? I mean, that doesn't even make sense on any level. That shows you that their understanding, and I'm showing my fingers together about a quarter inch apart there, is that much of reality. Again, because you are already immortal and they just haven't realized that. So it's just an understanding that limits you, or lack of.
But I think I hear another part of what you're asking, Bill. And when you see someone else channeling messages from, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. He channels Melchizedek, right? Paul Selick, something. Anyway, he does allow that energy to not take over or not possess, but work through him, right? He is the vessel for that energy on Earth for that period of time. But you do need to, you start working with spirits, you need to go in there with some skepticism, make sure they are who they say they are, kind of thing. And that's, for me, that was part of the fun of it, is when you can have the spirit give you confirmation, that is who we're working with. And I don't want to say it is sort of play, it's sacred play, but it's a new way to play the game, right? And where that energy comes from is entirely up to you, and how you approach it, conjure it, summon it, whatever you're doing, right? Whatever lineage you're following, because a lot of them have pretty strict rules on how they operate. Some don't really. So, but it is up to you to approach it with caution. But it's there's a lot of schools of magic out there that will give you a lot of warnings, and they should be heeded, in my experience, learning the hard way in some extent. But there is a certain amount of it is a new way to play with reality. And for me, it's opened up a lot of different doors and completely changed my approach to life in general, and how I go about walking down the street and interacting with other humans. So, and upon reflection, it's made me better at playing the game.
Yeah, some of I've read readings of channeled readings, or and books like the Book of Seth. I think Seth is an entity that was channeled. Ra, the book, and who does the Law of One, and then I think that Ra stopped, and then they switched over to Quo. Quo is a different entity that is still channeling with the same group of people that Ra started. I think it's the Love and Light something or the other. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the messages seem to be, I mean, the messages are always constructive, and again, I don't see anything wrong. I mean, they're talking about love and how to get along and all these good things. But I guess the thing that makes me skeptical is if somebody's too theatrical about it, is a guy, because that's where it throws up a red flag.
Mm.
Because I guess I don't know. And go ahead.
Well, it's just how they're playing the game as far as I can see it. And really, for me, it led me back to, the oneness of everything. Everything is connected. We are all one, right? And that's that for me, that's where it led. So it makes it easier. Um I don't do as much working within ceremony and ritual as I did the past few years. Um, just kind of, I mean, it's all out there. I still do a lot of witchcraft every day, but it's not spirit work necessarily. It's more intention work these days. And, uh, but I'm at a loss for words, probably for a good reason about it. It's something to approach with some caution for sure. It will flip your reality upside down. Um, and that's what it asks, first to go through that alchemical process that you go through and all the initiation with it that's tied into it. You got to get burned down to nothing first. So if you're um, content and happy with how your reality is, um, probably just keep rolling with it. But if you want some change, it'll change.
Poke the bear. Do it. Um, yeah. So that's fun stuff to ponder and think about. But going back to trees real quick, the I have seen some interesting videos about super sentient plants, and there
Mm.
are some specific ones about trees in particular that they're moving across the earth. There's one I'm thinking of that you could see, like the trunk connects to the ground, and then it's just moving along the ground, and there's a pile of earth behind it. Pretty uh, unnerving, but that's not the first time that I've heard about that idea. I believe J.R.R. Tolkien has a race of tree people, Ents. They're called Ents, Ents, in his books, in his mythology realm that he created, right? So he had to get the idea from somewhere. But do you guys, offhand, do you know anything about sentient trees? Other than that they are conscious and they do experience time in a different way, but like actually moving about and such.
No, I hadn't heard about that movie, but I was thinking, well, is it maybe a nutrient thing? Is it like, is it take years for them to move? I haven't actually heard anything about it. So I'm gonna jump on a search engine and start, and clicking away and see what I come across. But I hadn't realized as far as consciousness, 100%, they can. And they when I was in the redwoods, and it's been many times since then as well, but it was more like a collective consciousness communicating through that tree. So it's not like, oh, there's an entity trapped inside of the trunk of that tree or something. No, well, no more trapped than we are in this body. If you think you are, then you are. I'm not trapped in this body, far from limited. In fact, everybody around here would tell you he's barely even in his body. We're talking about me. And I'm joking, but I'm not. Because I like to stay more metaphysical and pick up on the stuff of reality. And just to add on to that, for some reason, maybe Ben will know because he's more aware of the 3D happenings than me often, I find. But something's going on with the moon and stars, and what maybe you mentioned, Bill, because of the visuals are now, I get to see stuff. I get to cheat, like I say all the time, with my sight, but they're coming in physical now because I'm having clients that see the same woo-woo stuff that I see. And I know it's not just me and my sight because they're acknowledging, even if they just, it was a quick flash and I can see a whole entity there, it makes no difference. They're still picking up on it, but that is happening more. So I'm just kind of pointing that out as well. I don't remember what
I
exactly.
think No, I think more and more people are becoming aware of the metaphysical nature of the universe, right? I hear it more and more. Um, coming out of that sojourn in the wilderness, so to speak, that I was on for a couple years, and getting back into um, society. I guess I really did kind of drop out there for a while. Bill was a lifeline for sure during those times, but um, so he's seen, me out on the edge, so to speak, or at least heard it on the phone. And coming back in, it was really refreshing for to hear so many voices talking about energy and breath work and all of that. It's more and more in the zeitgeist, which would lead me to believe it's going to be easier and easier for it to show up in our reality. If there's more people vibrating at a frequency in tune with it, then they're affecting the entire field around them. And, it'll just be easier and easier for it to become manifest in, or materialize, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's like everybody's singing a song. Get enough people singing the same song, you can't help to have it, expand and go. And oh yeah, that's absolutely happening. There's not a. I was also asked in a podcast something about, well, how many people have to? Doesn't everybody have to awaken or do this, that, and the other? I'm like, no, that's not a thing. And there's not a set number as far as I'm aware of, and I'm not privy to the overall book or whatever. It's a percentage thing. It just is enough of us. And so let's use Ben for example. So a high energy individual like that, not that everybody doesn't have energy, but he's been working with that a lot. So if he puts his focus or manifesting abilities, imagination, towards something, well, then it's going to manifest to a greater degree as well, because he's not limited thinking, well, my imagination is not real. Yet, even though the person thinking that has the potential to be just as energetically effective as Ben, they're not going to be because they limited themselves. So we need a bunch of those, again, I'll just tie to a lead singer like Ben and Bill and me and others like us that are walking the talk, as you say, to do it. And then it will kind of push the tide for everybody, holding those frequencies. And we'll make it, air quotes here again, easier for others to do it as well, just by leading by example.
Yeah, I mean, that makes complete sense because, I mean, if the more people that are aware of something, the more that it's whatever that thing is going to bleed through and manifest physically again here. The more people awaken and remember like what is actually going on and what's around us, and these other, being open to these other entities that are here to help us, right? Everything's here to help us. Everything's here for our benefits.
Yeah, all that stuff. You guys have heard about all that, right? The 100th monkey syndrome. And I taught in one of my classes the whole, and I forget I'm not going to bring it up and waste your time now, bring it up, but back in early something, the 40s, a whole track and field thing, the 4-minute mile was never broken. That's a thing. And then all of a sudden, whoever, did it, broke that. And then everybody else realized, oh, that's a thing. Well, they didn't all of a sudden grow bigger muscles because of it. They just realized it, so that they removed that energetic limitation of themselves in their head and their thoughts. And then all of a sudden people were breaking the 4-minute mile all over the place like crazy. And it's like, I don't know how many people have done it now. It's thousands. And we're still talking about in one generation. So it's not like, well, they evolved and got bigger, stronger, and faster. No, they became more aware that they're not physical, they're energy, and they ran with the energy, not the physical body. It's different, of course.
Well, that's a sinker. I was just reading about that exact thing, the 4-minute mile, on somewhere on the internet earlier this week. And I was looking around while you were talking about it, thinking if it was on a book I've been reading, but no, I know it was an internet post. I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, they were talking about the exact same thing.
Yeah. It's and that's not a coincidence. There's no coincidences. It was random. You were thinking about that, and I didn't know you were looking into that. Of course, we hadn't chatted. So what? Maybe that psychic thing's real. See, you're having thoughts, and I know, in fact, to the who knows what degree of that, because which makes me aware. So what I'm saying here is, I know without a doubt I can project my thoughts in somebody else's field, and they will pick up on them. And we've all done it. You know, you can sit around and think about your grandma, cousin, brother, sister, whatever, and all of a sudden they're going to text you or call you or email, whatever. But I'm talking about right directly in front of you as well, because of course there's no distance. Well, then once I realize that I'm doing it, and to a really strong degree, well, I guarantee I'm not the strongest guy in the room or anywhere else. There's always somebody, you know, more. So what I'm saying is, I then have to be hyper aware of that. Oh, wait, that little thought might not be mine. And even more so, I think Ben was saying earlier too. Wait, thoughts aren't you anyway, and I get that. But on a whole nother level, they definitely can be put in your space. So, and I'll use a big. If I have, I don't know, I'll just say an issue with somebody here at Mystical Wares for whatever reason. I don't want to get too personal here. And maybe they're just out of alignment with the other individuals. We'll put it that way. I'll do these things energetically and say, and never vocalize anything. Thank you, I appreciate you, but you know, you need to maybe move on or something. You need to clear the space because I'm kind of being a business owner. I have to average things out, not judging or anything like that. And, you know, I'm walking around things here as you guys are picking up on. So, but I'll do it that way. And it is on the money because we got this place filled with cameras. See it, instant response, and then get up, leave, or whatever the deal is that needs to happen at the moment. Because remember, this is just about a scenario, not a specific one. But that, and then I remember that going, oh my gosh, I literally, and not just a me thing, can do that. So I better then flip that the other way and realize, oh, and by the way, it does. I walk into, let's say, Walmart, and all of a sudden I start having these other thoughts or feelings. That's not my crap. That's other stuff I'm stepping in or feeling, or the thoughts. Like I just pushed a shopping cart through a pile of anxiety. Well, that wasn't me. So then we always have to wake up in that moment and realize that can happen.
On that same line, it's a fun experiment and to hone your telepathy. So obviously silently, I mean, that's how telepathy works for the most part. But talk to someone's higher self. So if you're having an interaction with someone and it's not necessarily going the way you wanted it to, ask their higher self to rein it in or whatever. I actually will do it at a gas station, you know, with the person behind the counter. And it's really it's just fun. And you can communicate with their higher self with, you know, if they're tuned in, they're gonna know. But you know, there's
100%. I've done exactly that. You're right.
yeah.
You can talk
But
to
if they're not aware of their higher self, that doesn't mean it's not there and still running the show, right? So you can smooth things out and have a better good, bad, whatever it is, right? But a higher vibration, if we're using that language, enter the scene and affect whatever that interaction is.
Yeah, no, yeah, because the higher self appreciates that let's say you or me in the scenario is even acknowledging them on that level. So it's kind of like that you talked about that person playing a computer game. So let's call it The Sims or something, or RPG. Well, then, yeah, if that little character down there being played is, you know, a whole lot of attention, that higher self or the one playing the game is going to, you know, be more vested and make sure their character does do, you know, whatever. And I'm not, you know, I don't want to tie too much saying it's a character and you're being controlled. I'm not saying all that. I'm just trying to get an understanding across here that, yeah, I agree with Ben 100%. If you are of the understanding, and it's just a thought, by the way, you don't have to have a special number or anything like that. You just be aware and choose to communicate to that higher self of that person. It happens. That's how it goes. And then they will appreciate that. And then just like Ben said, tone it down or turn, you know, whatever, you know, how you're trying to affect it. As long as it's always, you know, what's best or in alignment with them. And, you know, as long as you're not trying to manipulate, and we're not talking any of that anyway, and we're not. So yeah, that's great to bring up. I'm glad you did.
That's interesting because earlier today and over the past few days, right, I've been telling my angel to go talk to other people's angels, you know, higher selves to you know, help them, calm them down, do what's best for them, right? But that would be just another spin to put on the same thing that Derek was just talking about, and before that, Ben was just talking about, right? Like if you want to use that terminology, right? Everyone's got a guardian angel. I can just say, hey, my angel, can you zip over here and have a conversation with this person's higher self or angel or whatever real
Yeah.
quick? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah. It's and that the whole idea behind spirit guides is part of that guardian angel um vibe. There is a team, ancestors and animals and whatever your soul decided it needed this for this incarnation is around you all the time, and you know intervening with the unseen things if need be. So, but your higher self is the one writing the script, so to speak, and you know the whole idea that nothing ever happens to you, everything happens for you. Um, it really is, to me anyway, that same. You're communicating with more than just, or interacting with on this plane more than just higher selves a lot of the time. So having your angel go talk, in their angelic language to that frequency that's around that other person is hugely beneficial. Yeah.
I watched the movie Michael a few days ago with John Travolta. Are you guys familiar?
I don't know. I have seen it, but it's been so long.
Yeah, it was that came out. I mean, I was in my teens, I think, when that came out. But I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think I had seen it before, but it came back to me. I was watching it, and yeah.
Yeah, I remember the dog for sure.
Oh yeah, the dog gets brought back to life. Spoiler alert. Yeah, angels are a fun topic. It seems that we talk about that a lot on the show. I'm okay with that. But I don't want to talk. I don't want to take up the whole time on my new business. Before we get into the third segment, do you guys have anything that you want to share? Something new you learned, or just anything that you discovered or startled you, or you know, anything along those lines? Because the point of this, I guess the point of this is now that we're in the second segment. I don't know if I described it or not on the show yet on this episode, but the challenge behind this is just to the point in the challenge is to further continue education, right? Let's everybody be autodidacts. Let's be self-taught. Let's continue learning and pursuing interests that are, you know, interesting to us. And so this is just a space where we can share anything that we want to. So
Well, you already brought up hummingbirds, Bill, and they have returned where I'm at as well, just recently. And Sunday, so yesterday on Mother's Day, um, first thing in the morning, right at sunrise, I always try and get out to greet the sun. And I had a really fun interaction with a hummingbird. I was sitting next to a hibiscus that had just bloomed, and it was fun. It is kind of, for me, it's a real grandmother energy when hummingbird comes around. So it was really nice on Mother's Day, and you know acknowledging acknowledging the great mother, so to speak. First thing in the morning was pretty fun, and then when I walked back inside, my mom was awake, and so I got to have a nice morning and coffee with mom on Mother's Day. It was fun.
awesome. Yeah, mothers and Archangel or Michael, right? The M is Mary, the maritime, motherly, this M energy. Because Michael, of course, angels, they are both, I guess both or neither sex. They're asex. They're not asexual. So like there's female and male to this, right? And I think that there's something to do with the M here, because the M, Mary, like I said before, like it's just uh Maru, or I think that's something else I've heard before, but you get the point I'm trying to make. Like there's a very definite like feminine connection, I think, or divine feminine energy here, and I think that maybe it's been kind of repressed at large, in general, and that could be the reason why we see so much imbalance around us currently. That's speaking of birds. I'm sorry, Derek, go ahead.
Oh no, was I here actually on what you were just saying? Did I hear birds a few minutes ago? Is that what you were going to say? Because I thought I heard birds come over one of your guys' microphones.
What?
Yeah, I'm sitting outside.
Oh, awesome!
So,
Because I was loving it. I was like, "That's cool."
yeah.
Am I hearing it etherically? I'm like, I don't know with these two. You never know what I'm going to hear.
Yeah, no, a hummingbird just flew by, earlier. I don't know, caught my eye, but uh there's a lot flying around for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, no, that's and then I was also going to say just build off of the angel thing too. I mean, there's it's always a play of words, but yeah, I don't when I communicate, I don't say male, female. I don't get involved in all that. So it's more just, and everything's energy to a crazy guy like me anyway. So I'm just communicating with the entity, and I don't even worry about the male, female, because when I communicate with past loved ones, say in a session, if somebody came in and so and so's relative has transitioned, well, I get to see different versions of them. So it's not always male and female. It just depends. Um, and then depends who I'm talking to, because then they'll say the person who's passed over or whatever a play of words somebody understands there, because they don't go anywhere. They're disincarnate. So if I'm just totally blunt and just not worry about everybody listening, I'll say, oh, they just got out of their vehicle. Now they're disincarnate. They're they're not limited anymore. They're in their energy body without a restriction. So they haven't moved anywhere, they haven't gone anywhere. They just got rid of a restriction called a body. And then they go from there because they're the same person. And then from there, goes on to other lifetimes, as you would call it. But what were you gonna say, Ben?
Well, it's just and that's when a lot of the angelic stuff shows up for me. I mean, Metatron doesn't show up standing in a meat suit. I mean, it's a Merkaba, or it's a that's what a lot of people seeing.
Exactly.
The more and more people are seeing the orbs out there. That's just energy showing up to say hello, really.
Yeah, we're tuning into and that Merkaba, and there's other geometric shapes and sacred geometry shapes, of course. Those I would like, when I teach that, I say those are more channels, not an entity, many entities. Yeah, and I know, and you weren't saying that anyway, but I'm just for this conversation, that so many entities can hold space in that channel or frequency and then communicate. So it's not like, oh, a Merkaba, that's always so and so or this, so no, not all the time at all, actually, because I can jump in that sucker and I'm not Metatron. So, oh, there goes my ear like crazy too. So,
Well, and yeah, and if you could get close enough to the orb, right, to really focus on what's going on inside of one of those things.
uh-huh.
I've seen a lot of different stuff inside that sphere of energy, right?
Yeah, it's like listening to a song, you were able to pick out, oh, there's a guitar, there's a pianist, there's a blah, blah. And then also you can hold it enough to go, that's so-and-so guitarist in a good mood. I know. Imagine how many layers that is, kind of thing. And those are levels of perception we can all do. If we limit ourselves going, oh, I can hear the music. Come on. So, there's always more to the story. And I don't believe for one second I pick up on all of it.
Well, and I have to thank you again, Derek, after our private session, working on that site part of it for me. Since then, man, it's better and better every day, or weirder and weirder every day, however you want to look at that. But yeah, you really did flip a switch that night, and grateful for sure, because it's really shifted gears for me.
Oh no, I appreciate you even saying that. And it is all you. So here's a good description. It's like, see, you were always doing everything right. I guess that's working out. Maybe you were lifting weights and I just gave you one little tip or trick, but then you're the one lifting the weights, brother. And you're doing
For
yeah,
sure, but you definitely like
I
on
know.
the ones and zeros, man. You tweaked a frequency there, and like we said, we kind of swapped a little bit when those light beings showed up
Oh yeah.
and wanted to interact, right? I mean,
Your audio
Um,
is throwing me off the charts, by the way. When I sit here, I can't even go to a podcast without you now. You ring the heck out of my ears when you're even thinking over there doing things. It's like, oh my God, how do I communicate? And have you make a couple comments about, well, there go my ears again. And that's a you thing with your audio. So you're just, adept at that as well. So and I definitely pick up on it.
cool.
And just a note on angels, the word itself comes from the Greek angelos, if I'm remembering correctly, and it just simply means messenger. So this is really I think we've said this before on the show, this is a role that can be filled. It is a function that can be performed, right? So it's not limited to a certain specific one entity, right? It kind of reminds me of saints, right? In my opinion, and I've heard it said elsewhere that anybody that thinks more of others than they do of themselves is a saint, right? Just because you're not canonized or whatever, right, doesn't mean you can't be a good person or a saint, right?
No, that's
Yeah,
good.
and well, I mean the angelics that I've interacted with, like they'll show up in a choir sometimes. The myriad is a number, right? So it's yeah, it's a fun frequency to interact with for sure. And you're not wrong in saying it's around this podcast for sure.
Derek, you unmuted. Did you have something?
No, I was gonna say, I'm sitting here looking at some trinkets on my desk. I've got some, well, one of them is actually called a sacred relic that was gifted to me. I can't get too much into that right now. I
What's
can't.
what? Oh, come on. Okay.
It's well, it's shaking and vibrating. I'll tell you that, and I'll get more into it because you can hear me move my head because I'm looking. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? It's a little. It would look like a little glass bead. It was brought over. I'm just gonna use the easy terms, and I am not doing it credit. And they were a group of Chinese mystics that came over to another individual that knew about me and tumbling shungite with silver and that whole deal. So they were gifted a piece of my cosmic silver shungite. It's called. Put this relic near it, and again, it's a little tiny. Oh geez, a little see-through. It looks like a bubble. Mine's actually a certain color, and they change colors. Long story short, they put it on the cosmic silver shungite, and they'd heard stories about these things reproducing themselves. Well, it did it 5 times, which is why I was gifted one of them. So I had this little again, I'll leave it there because I can only say, and I'm getting stopped etherically, just so you guys know. And this happens during sessions. If something's maybe not the right time, not place, or I'm not putting the rest in there, my ears, putting the, in my terms, recipe out right, because I'm jumping in this so fast because it really grabbed my attention. But this little relic here, oh, that's what oh geez, I don't want to be it was, I'm gonna use the term Chinese mystic, but it was a Buddha-like individual. When they die, the story was, and I need to go back over this, their body turns into certain crystals and things like that. Again, I'm not doing it justice. Okay, well, this is what that was. This was that crystal pulled from an enlightened, Buddha-like figure over there, and then maybe another term. And then in these individuals, modern day ones, had these relics, put it in the cosmic, and then it multiplied 5 times in different colors. And then they gifted me one of them, and that's what's sitting here. And that's what I'm talking about. And again, I wish I was doing it more justice. I haven't thought about it in so long. And I was like, what is shaking? And I have a little bowl in front of me. Actually, I have a piece of the Giza pyramid right here as well. Somebody walked out of it earlier in the year and looked down, and it was sitting right there at their feet, and that ended up in my hands. So all my energy tools are actually little trinkets like that. I don't mean little trinkets in a negative way. I'm just saying there's a lot of powerhouse stuff here. And this thing's changing colors. This little relic, it's turned into a smoky quartz color from a light, I don't know, reddish or pink. So that's what's going on during the podcast, and that's what caught my attention and why I unmuted there. I'm actually putting it back in there now.
Neat.
So yeah, well, I got crystals right here in the hand, like 3 or 4. I can grab it, and just show you where the color's been yanked out of them during sessions. And that's where I just need to find somebody who's more into the sciences, I guess, to tell me, I don't know, whatever frequency I'm flinging in here, it straight up physically affects these crystals and things. Not every one of them or every time. In fact, it's usually when I'm dealing with an entity or a negative attachment.
I was gonna say you're hanging on to those crystals, man.
Oh no, most of them, if they're a negative one, no, they go in the river. Things like,
I was gonna say mine usually just disappear at some point, but if I don't get rid of them right away.
oh yeah, yeah.
So
No, that happens too. Yeah, I don't. And then healerite. So it's actually Washington serpentine. So really, that thing is a really pretty green. I've done it in here, and I didn't know I was intuitively led to grab it. I do my whole hand thing that we'll get into now. I look down, that thing was like a putrid yellow instantaneously because the person had a, I'll just say, a negative energy attachment. And again, I'm being vague for a reason. Well, that definitely had an effect on it. So no, that piece ended up in a nearby river that's only about 100 yards away. But it just depends on the crystal or lepidolite, because some of these things I'll use for the frequency. Because like lepidolite's a good one for people that are often they're evidently doctors are prescribing what I'll loosely call head meds and the Paxils and the Prozacs, all that stuff for so many people nowadays. Well, you don't need that crap. You're not a chemical being. You're an energy one. So there's rocks and minerals that can have the same effect on you, like the zeolites, the apotholites, the lepidolite, which is a purplish one. So for anybody listening, search engine those things up and look into them. And they will have an effect on you, especially the zeolites and apotholite crystals. You can have them in your environment, and it's a frequency, and they'll straight up change.
Yeah, I'm looking over here at all my crystals, looking for something that's vibrating and nothing's happening. But I have a relic, and we won't have time for it this episode, but I will bring it up in the future episode because I think it's a great topic, and I wanted to talk to both you, Derek and Ben, about it because it's such a cool story. But it is a relic of Saint Anthony de Padua. Saint Anthony has been part of my life since exactly from kindergarten through 8th grade, and beyond, because my parents still belong to that parish. But yeah, there is I have a relic. Yeah, back to the relic. There's from what I've learned in Catholic school, there are 3 degrees or 3 different stages of a relic. If going from memory here, so but the first degree of a relic of the first degree, right, is like an actual piece of the body or the blood from the person, and a second degree relic would be like a piece of their clothing or something that belonged to them. And then I believe a third degree would be just something that they touched, like something that they happened to bless or just everyday, it could be anything, right? But I actually have what I believe is a first degree relic from St. Anthony. I believe it is a drop of his blood on a medallion. And this is where it sounds that Catholics are super creepy because we keep body parts around, which was something new, right? By the way, that wasn't, at least not to my knowledge. Like when Christians were being persecuted, right? They would freak people out because so they would burn somebody at the stake, and then all the followers would rush in to grab the body parts, and everybody else that's standing around is like, what are these guys doing? This is, I mean, it looks insane, right? It looks crazy to the non-Christians, right? Quote unquote. So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, relics are interesting for sure. But it sounds like you have it would be a first degree relic if it was like a part of the person, right? Is that what you were saying? And then we'll drop the subject because I know it's probably not the time.
Oh, well, I mean, this is, I think what they said was they cremate the body and then they dig through the ashes. And then if the person reached whatever state of enlightenment, I don't know if they're claiming there was a certain gland that did this or the other, but there's these little tiny clearish beads looking thing, really small, that they pluck out and the whole story, there's a whole history behind this. But when those, we'll call them relics from that point on, are in the right frequency, they're supposed to do that. And this isn't something that happens, it happened 6 months ago. No, it doesn't even happen on how many lifetimes. Well, that's when it happened. And again, I guess they got 5 of them in different colors, and became a big, and I'm the only one apparently in the United States that has, because it's not something that is usually gifted outside of that whole culture. Yeah, and that's what a big deal it was. In fact, I've never even talked this much about it, and I'm really kind of skirting everything ever, because it's not something that I'm just, I don't know how much I should get into it all. I use it as a tool to benefit others when needed. We'll put it that way. It's a frequency device, which yeah, can help boost things like Ben and I were talking about a little bit earlier. So with the right intention, yeah, it's a great energy tool.
Well, we'll definitely touch back on the whole relic topic in the future episodes for sure. I'll make a note of it now. But did you have anything specific that you wanted to share for new business? Otherwise, I kind of wanted to get into the third segment because it's super interesting stuff to get into, in my opinion. But anything you'd like to add before moving on?
I don't have any new business. I don't know if we already has been or not, but no, I'm good to go whenever you want to do.
Yeah, Ben had mentioned the hummingbird thing, and something new that I learned that a few weeks ago, a few days ago actually. I saw a couple of black vultures roost in the trees right by my house. Black vultures, as opposed to turkey vultures. Turkey vultures are much more common in this area, but I believe we saw were black vultures. And my wife informed me because she was doing some research. She's the one that identified them, right? But apparently, a turkey, or not a turkey, a vulture will projectile vomit when it's scared if it cannot fly away quick enough. So in order for it to fly away quicker, it will spew its guts and then fly off. And I found that mildly amusing.
You
But
gotta lighten the load, man.
I guess so. I'm back here laughing too. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. You are trying to fly.
Yeah. But like as an omen, I'm digging that they showed up. Um, they're definitely part of the energetic cleanup crew, you know. And I do some energetic janitorial work myself. So I'm always appreciative when the animal kingdom shows up to lend a hand. That's awesome.
Yeah, interesting. I never heard of black vultures before.
yeah, they're pretty, I mean, they were big. They were, should have taken a picture, but alas. I did, okay, so for the third, I guess I'll just quickly describe the purpose of the third segment is the point behind it is it's supposed to be inspirational for us, for the listener, right? For anybody that comes across this working. And so we try to cover topics that remind us that we have, empowerment comes from within, that we are truly beings of light, and that we're amazing uh, entities capable of anything that we put our mind to, and all this good stuff, right? And it's just a reminder, and the challenge is to put it into action, I guess. It's, I don't know, I'm not a mirror to the first or the gratitude segment, but it's inspirational. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Inspirational. So we've been covering the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and we've been going through the book in reverse order. That may sound odd, but I wanted to do that because it kind of gave some context behind behind the scenes of the Four Agreements. And we learned that a Toltec warrior there's three masteries that they will strive to conquer, I guess, throughout their lives. And there's the mastery of awareness, and then the mastery of transformation, and the third one is the mastery of intent or love, which is God. And the Four Agreements specifically deal with the mastery of transformation. And what this is basically is mental alchemy, right? This is just changing, transforming energy and forming it to your will, if you want to put it like that, right? So we have reached the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally. And I have about 10 bullet points written down just from rereading the chapter and highlighting some things and pulling them out. And I have about 2 pages from the book that I wanted to read explicitly, just because sometimes the author is able to put things more succinctly in their own words than I am able to try to summarize in bullet point. And actually, this has kind of been a challenge too, because he reiterates the point a lot, because it seems it makes sense. It makes complete sense. Anybody that hasn't read this book should absolutely do so. It doesn't take that long, but the concepts are so simple yet profound once you take a step back and look at it, right? That reminds me of Mr. Rogers' show. He wanted simple and deep message as opposed to complex and shallow. That Mr. Rogers is a pretty cool guy in my opinion. But to the bullet points for don't take anything personally right after I take a breath for a second. Bullet point number one. Bullet point number one. Personal importance is what causes us to take things personally. And this is the maximum expression of selfishness because we assume that everything is about us, is about me. And this is a programmed behavior from our education. And this leads to what Don Miguel likes to call us all domesticated, right? This is something we get through domestication, that we think that we're responsible for everything. Being raised in the Catholic Church, I can pretty much, I can relate to this a lot. Catholic guilt is something that I struggled with the other day, actually. And I caught myself taking things personally. But anyway, the second bullet, we take things personally by agreeing with whatever was said. As soon as we agree, this emotional poison goes into us and traps us in the dream of hell. And this makes us super easy prey for black magicians. Not taking things personally makes us immune to this emotional poison in the middle of hell. And this is what the gift of this agreement, this particular agreement, gives us, is this immunity. When we take things personally, we get offended and we react by defending our beliefs and create conflict. It is not important what others think about you because it is nothing personal. They are dealing with themselves, not you. And this goes for both ends of the spectrum, right? So if somebody thinks the world of you, or if somebody thinks you're a giant turd, it shouldn't matter, right? To you, anyway. If someone tells you that a thing you have said hurts them, the fault is not in what you have said. It is that they have wounds that have been touched by what you have said. You become merely the excuse for someone to get mad. They get mad because they are afraid and dealing with fear. Fear that you will discover that they are not perfect. If you are not afraid, then you can't get mad. And then just quickly here from the book, I guess this will be its own bullet point. And going off of the last one, if you live without fear, if you love, there is no place for any of those emotions, being, sadness, jealousy. If you don't feel any of those emotions, it is logical that you will feel good. When you feel good, everything around you is good. When everything around you is great, everything makes you happy. You are loving everything that is around you because you are loving yourself, because you like the way you are, because you are content with you, because you are happy with your life. You are happy with the movie that you are producing, happy with your agreements with life. You are at peace and you are happy. You live in that state of bliss where everything is so wonderful and everything is so beautiful. In that state of bliss, you are making love all the time with everything that you perceive. So I just kind of made that's on page 52 of the book, its own bullet point, because that is just a super cool, fun, energetic thing to say into a microphone for one. But yeah, so the next bullet point is just reading from pages 54 to 56. Pretty short actually, but before I get to that, what I just said kind of reminds me of what Ben was talking about at the beginning of the show about gratitude. But moving on to the next one, and the I'll just read. Even the opinions you have about yourself are not necessarily true. Therefore, you don't need to take whatever you hear in your own mind personally. The mind has the ability to talk to itself, but it also has the ability to hear information that is available from other realms. Sometimes you hear a voice in your mind, and you may wonder where it came from. This voice may have come from another reality in which there are living beings very similar to the human mind. The Toltecs called these beings allies. In Europe, Africa, and India, they called them the gods. Our mind also exists in the level of the gods. Our mind also lives in that reality and can perceive that reality. The mind sees with the eyes and perceives this waking reality, but the mind also sees and perceives without the eyes, although the reason is hardly aware of this perception. The mind lives in more than one dimension. There may be times when you have ideas that don't originate in your mind, but you are perceiving them with your mind. You have the right to believe or not believe these voices, and the right to take what they say, and the right not to take what they say personally. We have a choice whether or not to believe the voices we hear within our own minds, just as we have a choice of what to believe and agree with in the dream of the planet, which he calls is termed the metote. There's a specific term for that. The mind can also talk and listen to itself. The mind is divided as your body is divided. Just as you can say, I have one hand and I can shake my other hand and feel the other hand, the mind can talk to itself. Part of the mind is speaking and the other part is listening. It is a big problem when 1,000 parts of your mind are all speaking at the same time. This is called a metote, remember? The metote can be compared to a huge supermarket, a huge marketplace where thousands of people are talking and bartering at the same time. Each one has different thoughts and feelings. Each one has a different point of view. The programming in the mind, all of those agreements we have made, are not necessarily compatible with each other. Each agreement is like a separate living being. It has its own personality and its own voice. There are conflicting agreements that go against other agreements, and on until it becomes a big war in the mind. The metote is the reason humans hardly know what they want, how they want it, or when they want it. They don't agree with themselves because there are parts of the mind that want one thing and other parts that want exactly the opposite. Some part of the mind has objections to certain thoughts and actions, and another part supports the actions of the opposing thoughts. All these little living beings create inner conflict because they are alive and they each have a voice. Only by making an inventory of our agreements will we uncover all the conflicts in the mind and eventually make order out of the chaos of the metote. And that's it from the book excerpts, and just two more bullet points to finish off from my notes. Taking things personally sets us up for suffering. By not taking things personally, we avoid many upsets. Anger, jealousy, envy, and sadness will disappear. This does a number of things. This offers us a huge amount of freedom. It offers us immunity to black magic, and no spell can affect you, no matter how strong it may be. When we refuse emotional poison, it actually becomes even worse for the sender that's trying to, hook you into their magic, right? And last point, as we make this agreement a habit, the agreement of not taking things personally, as we make that a habit, we don't need to place our trust in what others say or do. We only need to trust ourselves to make responsible choices. You are never responsible for the actions of others. You are only responsible for you. That's the end of my notes. Did anything pop out to you guys from that, or anything you want to add or subtract, or all the above? Any of the above?
Well, a little bit in the first one you first talking about, I liked how you're mentioning, I mean, the gist of it is, uh, you can, I'll just say you can control your frequency, your thoughts matter, that you hold space. And the more you stay in that love or positive thoughts and feelings, the more your, and our biofield aura is that, the more perpetuates. So I just thought it was great that he was getting in all of that, and that you can, and now I use my terms, of course, we can wake up in these moments of stress, anxiety, depression, which are just frequencies. They're not an emotion we're in. Again, we just have to wake up in the moment and realize, oh, and I know it's easier said than done sometimes, granted, of course, but we just have to have that realization and then start singing a new song. And eventually that new song or thought or feeling, positive direction you want in ahead will perpetuate and get stronger. You just got to, again, just start the process. So I thought that was great that was acknowledged on a couple ways.
Well, and also getting, all your parts lined up. It's a lot like Schwartz's internal family system, and all of being in alignment with all of it, and making sure that all of you is all in before going forward. I think I like how he put it.
The thing that jumped out to me, and this is just because I was reading Carlos Castaneda not too long ago, is that he calls when our mind is existing on the levels of gods, they instead of gods, he uses the term allies, and that's a term that Carlos has written about that shaman using. I forget the gentleman's name, Juan, right? It was Don Juan, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, and it's a lot like the ancestors. Um, you can look at that in much the same way, because it's not just the ones you knew. It's your entire lineage when you start getting into that ancestor work, and we are all connected. So you're talking to all the ancestors at that point, right? And which what I like about that, sort of earth magic root work, uh, it is that barefoot, hands in the dirt kind of work that for me anyway, that got me tuned into that. And it is, the gods are, if we're talking about the planets, or we're talking what pantheon do you want to go to, but it all boils down to that interconnectedness. And if you get yourself in line, then you're in line with that frequency as well, and everything flows from there.
Yeah, and I also love that he brought up perceiving without the eyes. Like the mind can see without the eyes. Everybody talks about seeing with the mind's eye. I wonder how much of that is the pineal gland, right? That's what I think about. Um, the other thing that kind of was pondering as I was writing my notes is that when a black, we'll just say when a black magician sends you emotional poison and you don't accept it, it is then, for lack of a better term, deflected or reflected back to them, and it becomes even worse than like that condition is then even is worse for them than what they were trying to imagine you in or trying to get you like roped into, right?
Right. That the energy they were trying to put upon you is then back in their field, especially if you know about it and send it back with love, you know.
Well, that was
Um,
yeah, that was where my next thought was like, well, what if you're not a black magician? What if you're a white magician and you're sending out good vibes? Like, what if I mean, that comes
yeah,
back to
no,
you as well,
well,
right? It doesn't matter if it's good or
no,
bad. It's still coming back.
no, knowing your magic is powerful as well, and having that confidence, right? And it's the black magician is just the one who's putting you in that fear and anger state, right? It's not the some shadowy wizard that you're pissed off at a nightclub or whatever. I don't, it might be, but it might just, be that coworker or your mother-in-law too, that is sending out that frequency that you need to then send back with love. And um not take it in. There's a story about from the Buddha, about receiving a gift. Receiving that anger is much the same way. You can say no thanks, and if you say no thanks, then it's theirs again. You know, so
Yeah, that's good input. And what I was going to add was sometimes it might even behoove us not even to. So I've come across, and again, I always got to walk around things, but such entities that I didn't send anything back. I just think along the lines of this. dissipation. So let them throw a punch, dodge it. Don't even give them feedback. Let them think they did it. Otherwise, because then it's always a tit, not always, but it can get turned into a tit for tat thing. And again, nothing is always the answer. So I'm not saying this, but in some circumstances, just to add more to the picture, I do let maybe them think their thing landed or something like that. I don't mean so. Meaning don't send back the energy, and then it's kind of just dissipates from there. So just lots of ways of playing is really my point. I'm not saying it happens in this way, but yeah, there are other options.
Well, I don't see that that response is verbal really either. It doesn't have to be. It just has to be energetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I just thought it was an interesting illustration of like, because it's an illustration of a law, right? Of how that law works, right? It is whatever you send out, you get back. And in this case, right, he's talking about the negative, like this emotional poison, but it can work. It does work with, the other type of energy, right? I mean, we're doing it here, we're doing it now in the show, sending it back and forth. And it's building. Like it's hopefully, listener, if you're not catching this live, because we do this live on Mondays, try to anyway. But yeah, hopefully you've noticed an uptick in your own personal energy field since listening to the beginning of this show.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Sharing energies, frequencies, understandings, and then we all benefit and expand. And that's why we like describing it. Or why we all benefit having, I don't care if it's 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the Krononauts here or anybody else. We all have different perception levels or ways of describing things so that others can get it and pick up on it. Because there's no one concrete way to, let's just say make bread. Come on, how many types of bread are there out there? So it's great having all these different introspections or inputs from people.
Yeah, and I more the merrier. Speaking of inputs and people, the other thing that I wanted to emphasize that he pointed out was that the reason is hardly aware of this perception, and by this perception he's meaning that the mind seeing without the eyes, right? So yeah, our reasoning logical mind can only take us so far, right, to a point, and then we kind of have to walk by faith, not by sight, right?
Yeah, good point.
Well, and that is part of the clairvoyance too, right? I mean, that just boils down to clear vision. And so if you can see without your eyes, and that's where you're surfing those energetic waves at that point and navigating the flow of energy. Yeah, usually outcomes turn out more fortunate.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point behind the segment, is to give us little inspirational tips and tricks of how to bring about, manifest, all the above. And that's one of the is one of the things I have to work on not saying. And of course. But yeah, we're not at quite at the top of the hour, but we've got a good hour and 45 minutes here. So I'm happy with what we covered as far as the third segment goes. We covered a lot of different topics in the second one, and of course, gratitudes were always great. I guess next week we will be doing the first agreement, which is being impeccable with your word. And then after that, well, I think we decided we're going to do the Celestine prophecy. So we might spend a couple episodes or more discussing that. I'll have to brush up on that subject. And that's what's in store for the future. Do any of you gentlemen have any final thoughts this evening?
No, I just want to say I appreciate my time with you both, and I always get new breadcrumbs and synchronicities even line up like they did earlier in the show, and so it's awesome. No, I have a great time being here.
yeah, just grateful to be a part of it tonight. It was a great conversation.
It was. It was an awesome episode. Thank you both for humoring me, and thanks for anybody listening live. And of course, after the stream, we usually post these on Tuesday evenings in podcast format. And if you do want to join us live on Monday nights, we do have a chat room where you can interact with all the Chrononauts that are here, and you can listen live, and that is located at chrononautchronicles.com. And until next time, Chrononauts, carpe diem.
Okay, I disconnected the radio station, so we're good. And we're off.